Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you could join us for our very special program tonight, looking at the snow show in Tampa and all of the shenanigans that might have happened around that event. My name is Lisa. I'm with the Tampa Hillsborough County Public Library, and we are joined today by our pal Jim Weiss, who is a docent at the Tampa Bay History Center. Welcome, Jim.
Good afternoon or good evening.
We are going to jump right into the program in the moment, but just a quick reminder, if you have any questions as we go along, you can type those into the chat box at any time, and we would love to answer those during the Q&A at the end of the program. So with all of that vital information out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to Jim to get his presentation started. I will be off camera in the background, keeping an eye on that chat box and answering any technical questions you might have during the program. So I will see you at the end, and Jim, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, about 64 years ago, in 1958, downtown Tampa was where everyone shopped. And I think that's probably true of most cities. I know in my hometown, we used to go downtown and shop. All the major department stores were downtown. But in 1958, we had built two malls, Brittany Plaza and Floraland Mall, and people were beginning to shop in the outlying malls because of parking primarily, but just more convenient to run down there. And a lot of people always felt like you had to dress up if you're going to go downtown, and somehow or other the mall didn't require that kind of a commitment to dress up. So the merchants downtown were trying to figure out a way in November of 1958, how can we get people to shop for Christmas, do their Christmas shopping downtown? And a guy by the name of Howard Hilton wrote the story that I'm going to tell you about. It was written up in the Tampa Bay History Journal, which you see on the screen. And he was at the time the director of advertising for the major department store in downtown Tampa called Moss Brothers. Many of you may remember Moss Brothers. He left Moss Brothers and he started his own advertising agency. He was very, very well known by everyone downtown. And one of his first clients then was the Downtown Merchants Association. He was asked by the Merchants Association to do something spectacular to attract shoppers downtown for Christmas shopping. He recognized that the trend was that the downtown area was dying, so to speak, in terms of shopping. So in 1958, he had this idea of having a winter carnival on Franklin Street. Now, Franklin Street is the main street at that time of downtown Tampa. So he starts to pitch that to his members of the Merchants Association. And oh boy, they're just, everybody's enthusiastic about it. Harold Wolf, the owner of Wolf Brothers, a men's store downtown, decided to throw a big bash at one of the downtown clubs. He furnished, it was free. The bar was open. He got them all ready, and then he pitched this idea. And of course, most of the merchants were very, very enthusiastic about it. The old story about a snowball rolling downhill and it just got bigger and bigger without anybody thinking of the consequences is very apropos here. Everybody said it was a fantastic idea. No problem. Where are we going to get snow, though? Well, there was a guy who owned a company called City Ice. City Ice furnished all the chipped ice that was put on the shrimp boats down here in the port. So he said, I'll get you all the ice. I'll get you all the snow you want. I'll just chip the ice much, much, much finer, and we'll create all the snow you want. Don't worry about it. We got all the snow we need. And so the plan kept rolling along. They actually had to cool the streets. They put these huge blocks of ice on Franklin Street before they did anything else to cool it off, so that the so that the ice wouldn't melt immediately. So the plan was to block off 5 blocks along Franklin Street, 5 city blocks along Franklin Street, to have this snow show. One of the things they're going to do is build this huge ski slope or toboggan, ski slide or toboggan slide. It is 5 stories high. You can see it's higher than the tallest building there in that picture. And you can see it's built out of contractors' scaffolding in the background. The bed of the slope is wooden slats, and they were going to put chicken wire across those slats and then put a snow on top of the chicken wire. Chicken wire would hold the snow in place. So it was 200 feet long, 15 feet wide, so it could accommodate a toboggan as well as skiers. And the chute at the end of it, you would come down this thing, and then you'd end up going down a long chute full of snow, and that chute was going to be another 1.5 blocks long after you came off the ski slope here. Because this Franklin Street was the main street, and because it was all blocked off for 5 blocks, they had to build a pedestrian overpass. And they used that later on when the mayor decides to kick off this whole thing. He does it from the center of this overpass across the street. It took them 40 hours of time just to fill this chute, this slide, and the accompanying chute with the snow that was needed. Here you see a picture of them pumping. See, they took 4x8 sheets of plywood here along for the wall on both sides, and then they pumped all this ice. You can see this guy spraying chipped ice into this chute, so that when you come off the ski slope or the toboggan slide, you go on down the street for another 1.5 blocks. And so we got to have a skier. Let's get old Leif Svensson. He was a Norwegian Olympic skier, and they talked to him. He asked him to fly to Tampa to be part of this Christmas show. It's going to open on a Wednesday in the middle of the week. And he says, sure, that sounds like a great idea. I'll be over there, no problem. So he's the guy that's going to kick this whole thing off. He'll be the first event. And everybody, of course, will be down there to watch this happen. Also, part of the plan was to get a very, very large Christmas tree. They wanted to get a tree taller than the one at the White House, or taller than the one in New York if they could. So they looking for a tree that was going to be 80 feet high. How are we going to get a tree from up north or on a Christmas tree farm? Actually, they got it from Minnesota. They asked the Navy if they would bring it down on a ship. The Navy said, no, we can't do that. Send an icebreaker through the St. Lawrence Seaway and just to haul this Christmas tree down here. No, they couldn't do that. There was a touring troupe of ice skaters, mostly gals, 20 ice skaters in a show troupe called Jack Kelly's Ice Frolics. So we'll create a little ice skating rink right in the middle of Franklin Street. And we'll get these gals to put on their figure skates and do fancy things sometime during the ice show on this ice rink. And of course, we got to have some deer. We got to have some reindeer. I mean, kids are going to be coming down here, and they're going to want to see Santa Claus's reindeer. So we'll see if we can't find some reindeer, and they did. But the reindeer came in early, so we had to put them somewhere to keep them until the show was ready to go. They put them out Busch Gardens and let them run around out there with the other animals. The zoo said, we've got a couple of seals, and we could loan you the seals. The guy that owned a hardware store along there said, I can get you one of those above ground plastic pools. And that sounds like a great idea. We'll put the seals inside that swimming pool, so to speak, and let them splash around. The kids will love that. And of course, you got to have Santa Claus, right? So we'll get a Santa Claus and we'll set him up under the Christmas tree. And we'll even get school buses to bring the kids in from all over town. So here's a picture of Gigi and her dog sled of trained Alaskan Huskies. We can get her to start the show off by running down this chute on her dog sled with these Huskies, and she'll meet the mayor and they'll kick off this whole thing. The mayor, Howard, the guy was running this thing, the guy that was the head of it, called a place in Maine to buy 4 toboggans. The guy hung up on him. It was a prank call, obviously. So Howard called him back, convinced him that we were going to do this down here in Tampa, Florida. And it's the only time this guy ever sold any toboggans to anyone in Florida, but he shipped 4 toboggans down here. They renamed Franklin Street, the main street, all North Pole Parkway, and all the side streets had different appropriate names. They decided that they would have a toboggan competition between civic clubs, the Rotarians, the Lions, the Sir Tomans would. It wasn't really a race. It was just the toboggan would come down one at a time. They'd come down one at a time, and the toboggan that would go the farthest down the chute would be the winner of this competition. They even provided piles of snow, actually chipped ice alongside, and the kids could build snowmen and do other snow sculpting kinds of things. They wanted to build 2 enclosures, one for the penguins and one for the deer that they were going to put out there. Well, you know the saying, right? Anything that can go wrong probably will go wrong. And everyone was so enthusiastic about this that when they started to suggest these ideas, everybody just said, wow, yeah, let's do it. No contingency plans at all. It just, everybody's ready to go, fired up. So let the show begin. And weather predictions, that's the newspaper, the Tampa Tribune there, saying weather prediction, 4 feet of snow on Franklin Street coming Wednesday. This newspaper start to build up the publicity. Here's a picture of that ski slide and the scaffolding, as you can see in the background. 5 feet high, tall. Show's going to start on a Wednesday in the middle of the week, and they're going to have the Ice Queen throw out the first snowball. Actually, chipped ice does not make snow. It makes ice balls, not snowballs. So that'll be important a little later on, and you'll see why. But anyway, here's a talk about getting a Christmas tree down here. Picture of Sally Shields. She was going to be the Snow Queen. They contacted the governor of Minnesota. He found this 80-foot tall Christmas tree, had to use a bulldozer to drag it out of the forest. It was so big that they could not put it on a single flatbed rail car. They had to strap it to 2 adjacent connected rail cars. And so what do you suppose happened? The next thing they find out is that when the train went around a sharp corner in Indiana somewhere, it broke the Christmas tree in 2. They went back to the governor of Minnesota and asked him if he could come up with another Christmas tree, and he said, no, not really, not now anymore. He said, we've had a warm spell up here, and The ground isn't frozen anymore, and we've got nothing but mud. The bulldozers would just sink into the mud trying to pull a tree out of there. So they were almost going to have to, they didn't know what they do, but luckily there was an election going on in the city of Duluth, Minnesota. And the mayor who was running for re-election, he saw an opportunity here to help. And so he did get a Christmas tree. They put it on a train. They brought it down here. This is a picture of Franklin Street where the railroad tracks cross downtown. Those railroad tracks are still there, right at Morgan Street. So you see the train being unloaded. They used this huge crane that was owned by the Tampa Electric Company. The electric company used these large cranes to erect telephone poles or light poles. So the crane is going to hold on to the top of the tree as they lift it off the rail car. They were trying to get it set up. They had guy wires up and down the tree going off to the sides. They were trying to set it in on the street, but Franklin Street with its tall buildings can turn into kind of a wind tunnel. So the bottom, the base of the tree, the trunk of the tree kept floating around. And so they said, we got to do something. So they asked the city if they could cut a small hole in the street about just large enough for the trunk of the Christmas tree, maybe 6 inches deep or so, just enough to stabilize the base of the tree. I should tell you that the first branches on this tree are about 12 feet up the trunk. So the mayor says, sure, go ahead. We can patch the street, no big deal after you're done. So they get the trunk of the Christmas tree set into this hole in the street. They get the guy wires tightened up on all sides. They tell the crane operator, okay, let her go. Next thing they hear is a very loud crash. And then a whoosh, clunk, and then gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. They had punched through the street into the main sewage line leading out of downtown Tampa. There was this disgusting goo oozing up around the trunk, over the curb, onto the sidewalk. People were getting it on their shoes. And of course, the TV and news media were all down there filming this whole thing as it happened. And that, by the way, made national news, made it all the way to New York. People all over the country saw this happening. Anyway, they got that fixed finally. Here's a picture of kids playing in the snow. Notice they don't have any coats on. It's pretty warm down here in addition to but kids are having fun playing in the snow. Howard, the guy who's in charge of this, Howard Hilton, he's got to go out to the airport and pick up the skier, Leif Svensson, a Norwegian skier, as I said, the Olympic skiing star. He's in his car and he's driving toward the airport and he sees one of these temperature signs on a bank building that says 88 degrees, and he thinks, nah, gee whiz, 88 degrees. Oh boy, I don't think it's that hot really. So he turns on the radio to verify it. And sure enough, when the weather report comes on the radio, he hears them say, high of 88 today, and tomorrow's going to be even warmer, probably hit 89 tomorrow. So he brings the skier in to downtown Tampa. They put him up at what was the Thomas Jefferson Hotel, but they had renamed it the Thomas Jefferson Ski Lodge. Here's a picture of the mayor of Tampa. It was Mayor Nuncio. He's here with Sally Shields, and she's going to be crowned the Queen of the Snows. And she's going to be the one standing on this overpass that goes over Franklin Street with the mayor. She's going to wave her magic wand, and a crowd down there of 20,000 people will cheer as she starts the whole thing off. The police chief, by the way, is mad. He had no idea that 20,000 people were going to show up in downtown Tampa, and he didn't have enough officers to control the crowd, so he's running around unhappy about the huge crowds. Leif Erikson, you remember, is going to ski down this on the first day is going to ski down this ski slope, and Howard is standing next to the police chief, and the police chief says, "Howard, I'm not going to reprimand my officers who were supposed to be guarding your slide last night." Howard says, "What happened?" He says, "Well, it seems that students from the University of Tampa borrowed one of your toboggans about 5 o'clock this morning and took a couple of trips down the slide." And so he looked at the ski slide and he saw that all the snow had worn off, and you were looking at chicken wire, the bed of the slide. The officer said with a smirk, he said, I really think they had a pretty good time, actually. Howard didn't appreciate that, but he asked Leif, he said, now you can't do this. And Leif said, no problem. It looks like that chicken wire will be kind of slippery, and I can do this for you. So he goes up there, he gives it a try, and his first trip down the thing, he tumbles several feet down the slope. Everybody in the crowd screamed, excited screaming, and he said, "Oh, I can do this." So he went back up, and by golly, he did. He came sailing down it the second time, flawlessly, to the cheers from the crowd. And so now it's time for the toboggan contest. As I said, each toboggan is going to go down this thing one at a time. And so the first toboggan sails down the slide, and it was so warm that the snow, the ice, at the bottom of the ski slide had melted. So there's this hole at the bottom of the ski slide, which the toboggan hits, and the tumbling bodies go all over the place. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but that toboggan didn't go very far. So they quickly shoveled snow into that depression at the bottom of the slide, build it up again. The second toboggan comes flying down the chute. However, the snow they'd piled in there was a little bit too high, higher than the base of the foot of the ski slope, and so the second toboggan actually takes off, goes flying through the air, and of course bodies flew off the toboggan. A lot of them landed with the crowd. You notice that the crowd is piled up, standing very, very close to this chute, and so they landed in the crowd and weren't hurt. Nobody in the crowd was just scrapes and bruises, but not a lot of real injuries. I look at these pictures and I wonder, with the toboggan coming down there, how did we avoid decapitating someone? If one of those toboggans had gone flying off to the side, on either side, there could have been some serious injury. The newspapers are saying this is really successful, maybe too successful, because the crowds are so huge. After one of the girls coming down on a toboggan suffered a serious back injury, they decided to close that one down. So we've got, and here again is the police chief, a story about the police chief being unhappy about the number of people down there, just huge crowds. I mean, this is really something, right? Come on. Here's a picture of, they were going to bring Santa Claus in, and he's at one end of this long Franklin Street, bunch of snow, so they bring him in on a dog sled. And Santa is sitting under his Christmas tree, and kids are sitting on his lap, and they're telling him what they want for Christmas. And Santa says, "Of course, kid, you just go into Moss Brothers department store here and pick out your own gifts. Get as many as you want, and that's what I'll bring to you on Christmas morning." Well, Howard Hilton gets a call from a vice president at Moss Brothers. He had mothers who were mad, calling him and coming in to see him because his kids are crying when they were told that the gifts that they were expecting from Santa Claus would not be forthcoming. One enraged mother was said to have said, "I have no intention of giving Herbie an electric train, a bicycle, a hunting rifle, a motor scooter, and a year's supply of comic books." So Howard went out to talk to Santa Claus and tell him to cut that out. And he noticed that the Santa's cheeks were rosy, and so too was his nose, a little bit too nosy, or too rosy. It was because Santa had a flask with whiskey in it buried under his coat, and they had a plastic straw that ran up through his beard. So Santa was sitting there, sip, 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 getting schnockered all day long. Well, they fired him right now. Hired another Santa, brought him in. They had there was a men's store called Clark's Clothier's Store right there on the street, right on Franklin Street, right near where Santa was supposed to be. And the performers would use the dressing rooms inside this store to change into their costumes. So Santa number 2 went in there and changed into his Santa outfit. And then at the end of the day, he went in there and changed back into his street clothes, but he never came out. The store was closed, locked up, and after dark, Santa pulled out his tools and set to work on the wall, because right next door to this clothing store was a jewelry store. So Santa number 2 hacked through the wall, cleaned out the jewelry store, and disappeared sometime in that night. Someone on Santa's list probably had a very, very Merry Christmas. Remember, we're going to bring in penguins, deer, Santa's deer, and seals. Well, the penguins were coming from Argentina, and they got stopped somewhere in Peru, South America, because of something called parrot fever. There was a threat. So all the animals got stopped, and well, there go the penguins. But we still got the deer out there at Busch Gardens. It's getting late. We built a pen for them on Franklin Street, and we go out there to get them in 2 Jeeps with their headlights on, chasing them all over the park, trying to catch the deer. 2 of the frightened deer ran into a fence and had to be destroyed. Another deer ran smack into a tree and killed himself. So they gave up trying to get the other deer down to Franklin Street. So there go the deer. But wait a minute. A man hearing of this said he knew where he could get an Alaskan Kiska deer. And they talked to him about it, and they said, okay. So they got the Parks Department to transport this new deer into this pen they had built on Franklin Street. The next thing you know, Howard gets a call from the ASPCA. They said that this deer is something wrong. I think he's sick. Probably got the mange. These large clumps of fur were falling off of his body. So Howard gets the owner, and they hurry down to Franklin Street. They look at the deer, and the owner says, "What do you mean? Barnaby is just molting. He thinks it's spring." So that's why his fur is all coming off. Well, get rid of that thing. He looks ugly. Make you sick. Next thing you notice is here comes Marinuncio. Now, Marinuncio was about 5'5", 5'6", a little guy, but he always wore a derby hat. And when he was walking, he would walk with a bounce. And Howard sees Marinuncio coming, bouncing down the street toward him with a whole bunch of angry women behind him from the local chapter of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They stopped at the pool where the seals were. Turns out the water in the pool was too shallow, and these seals had great big sun blisters the size of grapefruits on their back. So there go our seals. And, you know, news at 11 tonight. The news that evening featured, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the motto of most news media. Screaming ambulance sirens, close-ups of people with bleeding foreheads that got hit with an ice ball, people throwing snowballs around, police officers arresting people for throwing these ice balls. Actually, it broke some windows in some of the stores along the street there with these snowballs. Luckily, they had actually purchased an insurance policy from Lloyd's of London for $1 million policy to cover them against this sort of thing happening. The newspapers, however, they were letters to the editor. Some of them were positive, some of them were very pro, some of them were con, some of them good and bad. Of course, the one of them had to do with the police not being able to control the ugly crowds. That's the newspaper article on the left. Mrs. B wrote in. One person said, if downtown merchants go to the extent to get shoppers downtown, by golly, they can surely have my business. Another letter said, what a letdown. You can't make snowballs out of cracked ice. Another letter said, I think the mayor of Tampa and other businessmen involved should be commended for having the idea of the snow show. So it was a mixed bag. The reviews are coming in, but they're very much mixed. Radio station, the main radio station was WFLA. They had a contest. They had this huge block of ice, great big block of ice, and people were supposed to guess the date and time that this block of ice would be melted, totally melted. So, and if you guessed the right time, or you were closest to the right time, you could win a Swiss alpine vacation. So that's a pretty big deal. But some kids decided to help the rock melt. They put some rock salt on it, and it started to melt faster than most people thought it would. But it didn't melt uniformly. It melted from the bottom much faster than from the top. So it ended up looking like an upside down pyramid. A 5-year-old girl was standing next to it, considering how much time left before it melted away, when the doggone thing fell over on her. Luckily, there was a paramedic group right nearby who pulled her out. She was frightened, but she didn't get hurt. But anyway, that's too dangerous to have people that close to that thing. So decided to forget about that. There were actually 40 lawsuits and insurance claims. And 2 years later, there was still one insurance claim that was unsettled. There was this lady who said she had hurt her back. And so you know how long it takes to bring these things to trial. So on the Monday, she was still on crutches. But the Saturday night before the trial, she was seen in a local bar dancing, actually doing the twist. So, you know, some detective took a picture of that, and that was the end of that lawsuit. But it was a publicity bonanza for Tampa. In-depth coverage of this thing was seen in the New York Times, Women's Wear Daily, and even on British BBC television. Wow. L&M Cigarettes had and you may remember this, had a commercial that ran, and at the tagline at the end of every one of these commercials was, they said it couldn't be done. So for weeks they ran pictures of Eric Svensson skiing down the snowslide and falling and tumbling with the tagline saying, "Snow skiing in Tampa, Florida? They said it couldn't be done." Fit right into their advertising. There was a letter to the editor where somebody said, "Snow and crackers just don't mix." So this thing is over, and Leif has gone back to Sweden, and Howard gets a letter from Leif, and he says, "In case you're going to do this snow show again next year, let me know. I can get several of my friends to compete in some sort of skiing event. Let me know so I can make plans." Do I need to tell you that Howard never answered that letter? So now you know. If somebody says, "Hey, I saw a lot of snow in Tampa about 60 years ago," you can say this was what it was all about. I look forward to you visiting us at the History Center when you can. Thank you for your attention. Lisa, do we have any questions?
We don't have questions yet, but I'm going to go ahead and remind folks who tuned in that they can get those questions typed into the chat box. Now we will have our Q&A starting up in just a moment. So go ahead and get those good questions in. I know we saw a lot of really fun history today, and I know that I have some questions in the back of my mind that I'm going to be asking about. I'll go ahead and have the Tampa Bay History Center website up in the background here for a moment in case anybody wants to write that down. And then I will tell you a little bit of how you can get to there. So you may have heard that you can check out passes to local museums and attractions through the library with your library card. That is what we call the Discovery Pass program. So if you go to the library's website, hcplc.org/Discovery Pass, that will give you all the information with our current partners for that and how you can get your free admission to those. So it's a great way to kind of explore our community. I do love being a tourist in my own backyard. We have so many great things here in the Tampa Bay area. So encourage you to check that out. If you see someone up here or don't see a local museum listed on there, check back. We update that website as we add new partners. So you'll always get the most current information by going to our website to check that out. So definitely give that a look. And as you see, we've got the Tampa Bay History Center included right there on that. So give that a check. And if you maybe got to our tonight's program a little bit later and you missed the beginning, or if you wanted to find one of our previous talks with the Tampa Bay History Center, you can find our recorded events on our YouTube channel. There's a couple ways that you can get there. You can go directly to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/TampaHillsLib. Or if you go to any of the library's homepages at hcplc.org, if you scroll all the way to the bottom and you see this little connect area here where we have the various social media buttons on there, this one right here, that red one in the middle, is the YouTube button. If you click on that, that will also take you directly to the library's YouTube channel. So go on there, type the word history into our search bar on our page, and that will bring up a lot of this great recorded content like you saw tonight. So we are going to jump into our Q&A now. Now that you know where you can go locally for some more of those Tampa Bay history shenanigans, let's jump into our Q&A. So I see someone just commenting that this would have made a great movie. Has there been any interest in getting one made? Maybe the Florida Film Commission, someone might get to work on that. I haven't heard anything. How about you, Jim? Have you had anybody tracking down some of that lore on your doorstep?
Not at all. I'm trying to think of somebody like Bill Murray or somebody else that's done some humorous, some funny pictures that would be great actors.
Well,
I can just see.
I'll tell you, I know it's the wrong era, but when I was watching you go through these slides for this event and some of the photos that we saw from the Burgert Brothers collection that had the actual event captured in film, when I saw the toboggan sled and all of these potential hijinks, the one image that kept popping up in my head was the Buster Keaton The General movie. Now, granted, completely wrong historical era, but I had that vision in my head, Buster Keaton going down the toboggan sled in Tampa.
Yes.
I
I
agree that would make a great movie.
I forgot to tell you that as a side, like the City Ice Company went bankrupt right after this. So providing all that ice didn't mean anything. I mean, he was, he knew he was going to be belly up anyway.
Well, you had mentioned that he gave them a sweetheart deal on that ice for the event.
Right. Yep. All the ice.
Not enough publicity in the world to stave that off, huh?
Right.
All right. If you have any other questions, go ahead and get them in. While the audience is typing their questions in, I'll go through briefly our contact information. So if you think of a question later and wanted to reach out, hcplc.org/contact, or give us a call 813-273-3652 for the library. And I've also got the Tampa Bay History Center's website up there, tampabayhistorycenter.org. Either one of us, if you have a follow-up question about this program, reach out. We're happy to help. And if you're looking for more programs coming up, either in branches or online, hcplc.org/events will bring you right to our events calendar. So, got that done. Jim, any last shenanigans or tales you would like to share with us about this event?
I was just going to mention that the Tampa Bay History Center does make these presentations in person at many of the libraries. So check the library schedules and you may find some of our history presentations being done other times. And we also have a lot of freebie days at the History Center. We have like Veterans Day. We let people in who are veterans free, and there's a lot of times when you can come. The History Center is very Tampa centric and very Florida centric. So if you're new to this town, you want to find out about its history, this is a great place to start. Right on the waterfront, right behind the hockey Amalie Arena.
Right over there by Amalie. That's right.
Right.
Well, I will go ahead and wrap it up there. I think we got all of our questions in. That was a great way to get into the spirit of a Florida winter. So thank you so much, Jim, for bringing us this historical hijinks. And thank you to our audience for joining us. We always love to see you here, and we hope to see you for a future program. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Bye.